It is the year 666 BCE. The mythical emperor Jimmu, who claims descendants from the sun goddess Amaterasu Omikami, founds the imperial house of Japan, which will continue to rule the islands of Japan for the next 2,681 years. But who was this mythical emperor who is said to be a descendant of the Japanese sun goddess Amaterasu? And more importantly, where did the islands of Japan even come from? This is a look at the creation story and the gods and goddesses that play an important role in the birth of the island nation of Japan. In the beginning of the universe, there was chaos, limitless and shapeless. All the elements were mixed together, and silence was the sound of the universe. Then suddenly, faint sounds of movement were heard, and out of the limitless and shapeless chaos, particles started to move and rise above the chaos. The particles started rising at different speeds, with the lightest rising above the rest to become light, and the rest becoming heaven or Takamagahara. The heaviest particles that did not rise from the chaos came together and became Earth. However, this Earth was not like Earth today. It was said that for millions and millions of years, the Earth may be said to have resembled oil floating, Medusa-like, upon the face of the waters. Out of nowhere, the first group of gods came into existence. They were called the Zokasanshin, or the creation gods. There were three of them, namely Ameno Kanushi, Takami Musubi, and Kami Musubi. They were followed by two other gods, Umashi Ashikabi Hikoji and Ameno Tokotachi. The first five gods that came into existence were called the five Kotoamatsukami. The gods of the Kotoamatsukami were genderless, had no partners, and did not have much to do since the earth was still in its watery state. Immediately after they came into existence, they went into hiding. After the gods of the Kotoamatsukami went into hiding, a second generation of gods emerged from nowhere. This second group of gods are called the Kamiyonanyo, which means 7 generations of the age of the gods, and aside from the first two gods, the rest came into existence in pairs of male and female gods. This meant that a total of 12 gods came into existence after the Kotoamatsukami hid away. The 12 gods were Kunino Tokotachi, Toyokomono, Uhijini and Suhijini, Sunugui and Ikugui, Otonoji and Otonobe, Omodaru and Ayashikone, and Izanagi and Izanami. After the gods of the Kamiyonanyo came into existence, the first two gods, Kunino Tokotachi and Toyokomono, also went into hiding. After the gods of the Kamiyonanyo came into existence, Earth was still in its watery state, so the gods summoned the gods Izanami and Izanagi and bestowed upon them the magical spear called Ameno no Hoko, or the heavenly jeweled spear, and tasked them with creating land. To complete their task, Izanami and Izanagi went to the floating bridge of heaven, also known as Amen Ukihashi, and gazed down at the watery and foamy state of Earth. At first, Izanami and Izanagi were unsure about what to do, until Izanagi suggested that they churn the waters with the spear. While churning the waters below, they felt the spear touch something and immediately pulled it out of the liquid. The gods noticed that the droplets that fell from the spear began to come together and take solid form. The drops came together and created the very first land, also called Onogoro-shima, or Onogoro Island. Pleased with what had happened, the gods Izanami and Izanagi descended to the Onogoro Island and made it their home. After coming to the land of Onogoro-shima, Izanagi and Izanagi then decided to marry each other and mate. To do this, they had to perform a required ritual so that they could be allowed to mate and have children. However, during the ritual, in which they had to circle a pillar called Ame no Mihashira, something went wrong. According to tradition, once they had circled the pillar, it was the god Izanagi who was supposed to be the first to speak. However, when the gods met, the goddess Izanami was the first to speak and said, "Oh, indeed, you are a beautiful and kind youth." Both the gods did not think much of it and made it anyway. However, when they had their first offspring, it was weak and boneless, like a leech, which disgusted them so much that they abandoned him in a boat made of reeds. They tried again, and their second child was equally as disappointing as the first. To understand why this was happening, the two gods ascended to heaven and inquired the other gods. The gods made it clear that they had incorrectly performed the mating ritual. To have proper children, they must perform the ritual again, but this time they must make sure that it is the male god Izanagi that speaks first. Izanami and Izanagi returned to Onogoroshima Island and performed the ritual successfully. Once successfully completed, the gods created the Oyashima, or the 8 large islands, including Awaji Noho no Sawake no Shima, which is currently Awaji Island, Iyono Futano no Shima, which is currently Shikoku, Oki no Mitsugo no Shima, which is currently the Oki Islands, Tsukushi no Shima, which is modern-day Kyushu, Iki no Shima, which is modern-day Iki Island, Tsushima, which is modern-day Tsushima Island, Sado no Shima, which is modern-day Sado Island, and Ohoyama Totoyoa Kitsushima, which is modern-day Honshu. These islands collectively became known as Japan, which was also called Oyashima Kuni, or the Island of the 8 Great Nations. Once Japan had been created, Izanami and Izanagi began the process of creating other gods who would rule over different aspects, such as Owatatsumi no Kami, who became the god of the sea, Kamihae Akitsuhiko, who became the patron god of harbors. However, during the birth of the fire god Kagatsuchi, the goddess Izanami got so severely burned that she passed away and moved on to the land of the dead. Overcome with grief, Izanagi fell on his knees and said, "O my dearest wife, why art thou gone, to leave me thus alone? How could I ever exchange thee for even one child? Come back for the sake of the world, in which there still remains much for both of us twain to do." In a fit of uncontrollable rage, Izanagi beheaded his own son, Kagatsuchi, for taking the life of his beloved. Out of the corpse of Kagatsuchi arose new deities, such as the god of ice, rain, snow, and winter, Kuraokami, and the water deity Watatsumi. Unable to accept the death of his wife, Izanagi went to the land of the dead, also called Yomi, to bring his wife back at all costs. After searching for a while, he came across a castle where he was expecting to find his beautiful beloved. However, once he saw her face, he was terrified. His beloved was no longer the beautiful Izanami that he remembered. Instead, she had been turned into a monster with a rotting corpse. Terrified, Izanagi ran out of the underworld and went to perform a cleansing ritual by bathing in the river in the island of Tsukushi. As he undressed and submerged himself in the river, various deities emerged. The most important ones were Amaterasu Omikami, who is the sun goddess, Susano no Mikoto, the god of the seas and storms, and Tsukumi no Mikoto, the god of the moon. Amaterasu was born when Izanagi washed his left eye, Tsukumi was born when Izanagi washed his right eye, and Susano was born when Izanagi washed his nose. Amaterasu, Tsukumi, and Susano were each given an equal share of the world, with Amaterasu being given authority over the heaven and becoming the ruler of the gods. Tsukumi was given authority over the night, and Susano was given authority over the seas. It is from Amaterasu that the modern imperial house of Japan traces their descendants from. According to legend, Amaterasu is the great-great-great-grandmother of Emperor Jimmu, who was the first emperor of Japan and the founder of the Imperial House of Japan. If you found this content interesting and want to watch more of it, consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel.